Okay, Simon, I'm going to take the lead on this one. There's a new
Sure.
Star Wars TV series. Think of it as Star Wars meets Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It's a show which isn't called Star Wars, but it's just called The Acolyte.
Last night, a Jedi was murdered.
The Jedi justify their galactic dominance in the name of peace. But that peace is a lie.
So, Simon, I'm not going to dwell too much on this one because, as with a lot of these franchise shows, if you're into it, you've probably already seen it. If you're turned off by the idea of a Star Wars, like you've probably just already made the purchasing decision that this isn't one for you. And look, that's fair. Like, the reason why these big IP properties exist is because there is a built-in audience, and I know that audience is going to turn out for it. It's pretty rare that you actually see an expansion sort of outside of, the expected audience. This one here, I think there was a lot of expectation on it, mostly because of the creators behind it. So the main creative voice behind this is this lady named Leslie Headland. Her big title is the Netflix series Russian Doll. She was one of three creators on that program. Yep. So she directed the first couple of episodes and she co-wrote them all with, and why have I just forgotten the actor's name? What's her name? From Russian Doll.
Oh my God, look at us.
Yeah.
The redhead from that other show that it's too early in the morning for us to remember.
I
used to be a cheerleader.
Yeah, star of our favorite movie, American Pie. Gosh. Just embarrassing.
Well,
I don't know
we
why.
good? Look at us. I know.
Yeah. Look,
it's
people
probably
tune
best
into
to cut all
this.
this out, but we'll see anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm not cutting it out. We're keeping it real. No, look, people tune into this podcast because they want like the truth of culture and the consumption of culture, and that is that most people don't know who actors are, and it's like, oh, it's that lady from that thing. That's Natasha Lyonne. That's who we're talking about, Simon.
That's who it is.
Natasha Lyonne.
It's a real time study in us aging and losing our memory. So it's important to keep that in for prosperity.
I don't even know where I am right now. I just kind of wandered into a room. But look, Simon, so Leslie Headland, when Russian Doll became the big sort of cultural zeitgeist hit
with Natasha Lyonne.
I said Natasha Lyonne. Jeez.
I know, that's for the
Did I? Who can say? So look, Simon, the Acolyte, the origin of this is basically off the back of Russian Doll. So Leslie Headland gets a whole bunch of heat behind that. She's more or less given the opportunity of saying, hey, what do you want to do next? Because of the commercial pressures of having one of the biggest like cultural hits of the year, they went and did a second season of Russian Doll, which I don't know that anyone ever saw. It certainly came and went, and I'm sure I saw someone mention on Twitter back in the day, but it certainly didn't have the heat behind it that the first season did. But that's fine. Off the back of that, though, she was more or less sort of given the rights to go and do whatever she wants. She took some meetings, and something she was super passionate about was doing a Star Wars TV program. Okay, so that's probably not quite the sort of, hip thing to do, but it's certainly the thing that actually meant something to her. What she really wanted to do was to explore Star Wars through the framework of what George Lucas had kind of alluded to and set up with the first couple of films, which is to explore the Asian cinema connection to Star Wars and actually have a TV show which is about sort of, samurai and people carrying swords and what that actually means as warriors. So what we have here is a TV show set in the era that they call the High Republic. So this is, I think, supposed to only be 100 years before the current Star Wars films, or like the earliest Star Wars films, chronologically. I don't think that's enough time. Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but, look the other way, just buy into that. And what you've got here is the Jedi who are emerging at a time where they haven't worked out what the Sith is yet. This is kind of like the origin story of the Sith and the introduction to the Star Wars universe of the light and dark sides of the Force. It's the lead character is a woman that had a twin sister when she was a kid. As we find out through the first episode, that twin is very much alive, and she seems to be a little bit evil, whereas the protagonist is someone who's a former Jedi who seems to be very good. Wait a sec, is this about the light and dark sides of the Force? I'm sure we'll probably see some sort of, flip sides of duality and what that means through these twins as the series goes on. But my overall thought watching this was that is all really cool setup. I really like the idea of this. I was a little bit bored by this program, and it's unfortunate because the framework is all kind of there for it. But I did feel that the visual look of the show was just a bit samey from everything else we'd seen from Star Wars. The fight scenes, like, it certainly harkened to a bit of that sort of wire-fu business that we saw from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Hero, and a bunch of the imitators that followed for the next, like, 5 to 10 years. Like, I don't know, it just kind of felt like we've sort of seen this before, and I wanted it to feel a little bit fresher.
Yeah.
Now, Simon, I know you've seen this. How did you feel about it?
Okay, so yes, I did. I rushed. I came straight off the plane, just whacked the telly on because I knew we'd be talking about it today, and watched the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte. I don't disagree with you in what you say. I found the first 2 episodes, despite it being set, as you say, 100 years before the uprising of the Empire and the wiping out of the Jedi, it still had which was an opportunity for it to go in a different direction with a different look and a different feel. It still felt very much, and I know the term's been bandied about, Disney-fied, not in the term that it's been made palatable for a broad audience, but certainly in the way it looks and feel. It's very much of, but not quite as good as Andor or Mandalorian, or for some of us, the Boba Fett one. So this felt, it also felt very young to me. I noticed through the week you made the comment that it's maybe a more mature telling, but I would say this is definitely geared towards the under 20s age group, and the lead actress is very good, and all the cast are skew very young, and that maybe, you know, the term bandied about is not my Star Wars, and I'm probably at that point where this is just too far removed from the Star Wars that I fell in love with for me to get a whole lot more interest. I've only seen a couple of episodes of Obi-Wan. I didn't return to Ahsoka, despite it being very good, the episodes I watched. So maybe just my interest has waned too far for this to hold too much appeal for me going forward. Quality show, good acting, fits nicely into the Disney Star Wars universe, but all in all, not quite the event television that the billboards around LA suggest it is.
Yeah, so, I mean, when I talked about it being a bit more mature, that was really about the hype of it before I'd actually gotten a chance to get my eyes on it. Look, there's certainly elements where it does feel a bit more mature than other Star Wars projects we've seen, but at the same time, I appreciate where you're coming from with that sort of YA vibe to it. At the same time, though, Simon, and I would say, look, there's 2 things. One, if you think about the lead actor, Amanda Stenberg. Sorry, she's got a funny spelling for Amanda with an L in it, which I knew that was going to throw me, and then I screwed up her surname. But anyway, like, she's 25 years old, and if you think about the very first Star Wars movie, Simon, which was about a young teenager named Luke Skywalker, with the foxy Carrie Fisher, who surely wasn't older than 25 when that film was released. Like, you know, this is kind of the age of Star Wars protagonists as set from the very beginning. Where I think that you're maybe feeling the youth of it a little bit more, and where that's maybe sort of permeating through the skeletal core of it, is that much like a lot of the Star Wars TV programs, it is filmed within what they call the volume, which is that special effects wall that they've created around them to create real-time background worlds that they can inhabit. And the result of filming against one of those on a soundstage means that everything feels really, really small. People aren't engaging in a background that is kind of behind them, but it does kind of shrink the physical space that these actors tend to inhabit. And I suddenly felt while I was watching this that it just felt smaller and felt sort of not necessarily more intimate, but certainly, I guess, cheaper and a bit more sort of youthy as a result. In a way, it wasn't so much Star Wars I was watching as an IP as much as it felt like the latest installment of the like 40-odd season Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It's just like the latest one off the rank, featuring whatever young stars I just kind of shoved into it. Like, that's just how I felt, and that's a bit unfair. But, you know, we'll see how the season shakes out, because I've only seen these first 2 episodes, like most people.
Is the Star Wars universe at a point where maybe the Marvel team found itself recently in that there's been so much mythology and so much backstory, and just the weight of what comes before it is almost weighing down the latest installment of it. That there's all this talk about Jedis and Siths and timelines and that all that kind of stuff is perhaps too much of a burden for the storytellers and the actual property to handle.
No, and I'll tell you why. Because chronologically, this is the first one. Like, we've never seen Star Wars set earlier than this.
But it still speaks to the Jedi lore and the Republic and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of, as soon as you start seeing those words, I know some people, I know me, are going, here we go again, another avenue I've got to go down to stay in touch with Star Wars.
Look, I mean, any culture is in conversation with other culture, whether that's part of an IP franchise or whether that's part of the extended world. There's no way that you can watch the Star Wars Acolyte show and not bring into it baggage as to where the Jedi are headed. And there'll always be like the occasional sort of cute lines thrown in, which kind of harken back to previous installments, regardless if they happen after this or not. That sort of stuff always kind of bothers me a little bit when I'm watching, but, you know, it's just what it is.
Yep.
I kind of feel as though creatively, though, they're not really boxed in by any of that stuff because they are treating it as though this is the beginning of the, you know, universe as far as we're concerned. Whether other Star Wars things come in and get set sort of even earlier than this, you know, who really knows? But they are trying to establish a world and a framework that the show can operate in, which stands on its own. So I don't think they're necessarily hemmed in by it, but at the same time, it's just kind of, I don't know. I think we're sort of trapped into visual language of Star Wars rather than the actual storytelling. And that's where the problem is with this show.
Sure. Yep. Agree. All right. So it's out there. 2 episodes have dropped on Disney Plus as we speak, and it's a weekly release heading forward. Yes or no? Let's talk fans should or shouldn't watch, and non-fans should or shouldn't watch.
Fans are going to watch regardless. Like, that's not going to change. What I would probably say is where the interesting point is people that feel a little bit burned by Star Wars over the years. Because obviously there's been some pretty dire installments like the Book of Boba Fett. Like, what even was the book? There was no book in that show. Regardless,
needed a book. It definitely needed a book. Needed more books.
If there'd been a novel in it, that'd be fine. Okay, he could just carry a paperback around. That would have been perfectly all right. But I just didn't understand it.
The Alan Dean Foster novelization.
Yeah, exactly. Look, if you've been burned a little bit by shows like that and you didn't come back for Andor to reestablish your faith in the Force, then, you know, you're probably going to be more inclined to give this one a bit of a miss. If you came back and was, like myself, really blown away by Andor, I think you're going to find this to be slightly disappointing, but you're probably still going to stick with it because, like, there's definitely something here to it. It just doesn't quite get over the line in the way that I really wish that it had. Like, it's so close to being really quite good, but it's just not. And if you're not a Star Wars person at all, like, this isn't going to really win you over. But maybe check out Andor because that's pretty good.
That's very true. Yeah, go back and watch Andor again. Okay, it's time for a super sexy man to talk about the latest film, Hitman.
Am I the right guy to eliminate your problem?
We're witnessing the birth of a movie star, Dan Barrett. Not Dan Barrett, but Glen Powell. Glen Powell is coming off your favourite movie of the decade, Anyone But You, and a scene of the centennial, as well as a scene-stealing bit part in Top Gun Maverick. He's actually been working for a long time in the industry, going as far back with his buddy Richard Linklater for Everybody Wants Some, and they've reteamed again for this new Netflix series, which I was fortunate enough to see on the big screen in the last few hours. I was in LA recently. We'll more talk about that later. It's called Hitman, and it is a film that is on the surface, and certainly via the trailer, a fairly by the numbers, maybe action romance. But when you watch it, you realize that Linklater and Powell, with the help of Adrian Arjona and co-scriptwriter Skip Hillingsworth and Powell, have created a film that's a lot smarter, a lot sexier, and a lot more fun than it has any right to be. Hitman is the kind of true story about a guy named Gary Johnson, who was a community college professor, dealing in philosophy and existentialism and all the big things in life, who was moonlighting with the local police department as a tech guy who would sort of go along on stakeouts and help with microphones and cameras and so on. He suddenly finds himself in a situation where he has to stand in for an undercover operation. He's got to face up to a person who wants to buy a contract to kill somebody, and he has to play this fictitious hitman. Now, he finds this to be exactly the outlet for his more masculine side. Gary Johnson is a bit of a dweeb, which is a bit of a stretch for Glen Powell to play, but he pulls it off wonderfully. And he has to then go back into situation after situation in different disguises to catch people who are trying to take out contracts. This is essentially the first maybe 25 minutes of the film, and it's great to see Powell have a lot of fun with disguises and putting on different wigs. He does a great spin on the character that Javier Bardem played in No Country for Old Men. A lot of different looking characters that he has great fun with. He then finds himself falling in love with Adria Arjona, which is not hard to do. She's a stunning woman and a very talented actress, and they have a great chemistry together on screen. He actually talks her out of a contract that she wants to take out on an abusive husband, and they then find romance. Now, this convolutes and complicates their lives. Her character is manufactured. She wasn't part of the true story that was Gary Johnson's life, but it does sort of create this element of identity. The theme of identity is really important in this film. His lectures to his class in the community college are based on that, and he gets to be all these different types of identity while he's playing this fictitious hitman and falling in love with her. And there's a couple of scenes where she takes up residence at a new apartment, and when he goes home to her, she's dressed up and she's putting on different sexy clothes. And there were bits of eye rolling through this as, oh, she's only just this pretty skirt who's getting to dress up. But there are also elements of identity and that she gets to explore. So that's what makes this a smarter film than you have any right to expect it to be. I know there was a couple of guys sitting in front of us at the cinema who I think were expecting an action romp, and it's not that, although it has some very sort of exciting moments as well. But this is definitely a smart script, a great acting role for everyone involved, including Powell, and just one of the better types of movies we see coming down the pipe out of the Netflix team. I wish it had gone to the movies, although it would have been a tough sell because it is it's not quite what the trailer maybe sets it out to be. But when you go in there and realize you can still have a great, fun, sexy time and also have your brain engaged, that's a big plus. So Hitman on Netflix from June 7, and to watch Glen Powell's journey towards movie stardom, this is going to be an important film for everyone involved.
Yeah, I started watching this last night and I was certainly enjoying it, but I was really just sleepy on the couch and shouldn't have pressed play at 10 o'clock at night. Big mistake. Instead, I decided to prioritize the French shark movie, which may have been the first mistake of the evening, but we'll discuss that and what else have you been watching. But look, you mentioned Glen Powell as, movie star of the century. I don't know that I've necessarily bought into the idea that he has the charm and charisma of, previous sort of actors with a lot of heat behind them. Like, the efforts of Hollywood to build him into the star of the moment just seem to echo quite heavily Colin Farrell back in the early 2000s. And I'm sure we've made this comparison
as
before.
well. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know that he's got that same sort of level of on-screen charisma, but also maybe I just haven't quite seen him in that one role yet where it's like, oh, wait, no, I totally get this. But like he seems amiable enough.
Hitman's important. I think that's Hitman does that for him, just like Jerry Maguire did it for Tom Cruise at a certain point in his career, and Cruise was a bigger star by that stage. But it spun off in a direction where you can say, okay, he's got the looks and he's clearly got the talent. If he can continue to work with the right people and the right script, he's going to make for himself a really interesting career to watch. I'm trying to compare him. Maybe he sort of has a young William Hurt look about him, though maybe a little bit more handsome than a young William Hurt was. There's clearly comparisons to someone like Redford back in their day, and to suggest he's got the same sort of star power as Redford, I'm not suggesting that, but he's got that everyman with some sort of darkness behind him as well, which Redford could play really well. So yeah, no, I'm certainly on board. Probably more so after this film than I was after Anyone But You. You know my thoughts on Anyone But You, and I liked him in Top Gun, but he was really sort of playing not a stereotype, maybe an archetype in that movie. So this is really the one for me where you go, yeah, I get it. I do get it.